U.S. presidents have carried European royal bloodlines into office? 34 have been genetic descendants from just one person, Charlemagne, the brutal 8th century king of the Franks. 19 of them directly descended from King Edward III of England. In fact, the presidential candidate with the most royal genes has won every single American election. This information comes from Burke's Peerage, which is the Bible of aristocratic genealogy, based in London. Every presidential election in America, since and including George Washington in 1789 to Bill Clinton, has been won by the candidate with the most British and French royal genes. Of the 42 presidents to Clinton, 33 have been related to two people: Alfred the Great, King of England, and Charlemagne, the most famous monarch of France. So it goes on. 19 of them are related to England's Edward III, who has 2,000 blood connections to Prince Charles. The same goes with the banking families in America. George Bush and Barbara Bush are from the same bloodline, the Pierce bloodline, which changed its name from Percy when it crossed the Atlantic. Percy is one of the aristocratic families of Britain to this day. They were involved in the Gunpowder Plot to blow up Parliament at the time of Guy Fawkes. If America declared its independence from the European monarchies in 1776, how is it possible that every single president has descended from European monarchs? If presidents are democratically elected, as we are told, what are the odds that we would always choose members of British and French royal bloodlines to lead us? Michael Tessarian wrote, "The Americas have always been owned and governed by the same royal families of Britain and Europe that conventional history states as being among those defeated during the wars of so-called independence." David Icke wrote, "If it really is the land of the free, and if, as is claimed, anyone really can become the president, you would fairly expect that the 43 presidents from George Washington to George Bush would express that genetic diversity. You're having a laugh. The presidents of the United States are as much a royal dynasty as anything in Europe, from whence their bloodlines came." Researchers like David Icke, Michael Tessarian, and Fritz Springmeier, along with foundations like the New England Historical Genealogy Society, Burke's Peerage, the Roman Piso homepage, and other reliable genealogical sources, have documented these royal presidential bloodlines. Actually, by branching out far enough on the presidential family tree, the dedicated researcher will find that all 44 presidents share kinship, belonging to the same general ancestry, often called the 13th Illuminati bloodline, the Merovingian line, and or the Windsor-Bush bloodline. David Icke wrote, "If you go deeply enough into the genealogical research, you will find that all the presidents are from this line." A spokesman for Burke's Peerage, the Bible of royal and aristocratic genealogy based in London, has said that every presidential election since and including George Washington in 1789 has been won by the candidate with the most royal genes. Now we can see how and why. United States presidents are not chosen by ballot, they are chosen by blood. Granted, the relationships are sometimes distant 10th or 15th cousins, but in a country with hundreds of millions to choose from, this simply cannot be chance or coincidence. Gary Boyd Roberts, a genealogist at the New England Historic Genealogical Society, thoroughly traced these connections in his book Ancestors of American Presidents. George W. Bush himself is directly related to 16 former U.S. presidents, including George Washington, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, James Garfield, Grover Cleveland, Teddy Roosevelt, William H. Taft, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. Bush is closely related to the King of Albania and has kinship with every member of the British royal family and the House of Windsor. He's related to 20 British dukes, the 13th cousin of Britain's Queen Mother, and of her daughter Queen Elizabeth. He's 13th cousin once removed from Prince Charles, and has direct descent from King Henry III, Charles II, and Edward I of England. Through the House of Windsor and King Henry III, the Bushes and Bill Clinton are genetically related as well. According to Burke's peerage, even according to the official genealogy, Bill Clinton is genetically related to the House of Windsor, the present royal family in Britain, to every Scottish monarch, to King Henry III of England, and to Robert I of France. In 2004, George W. Bush ran as a Republican against Democrat John Forbes Kerry, his 16th cousin. These cousins, related to the same British and French monarchs, are also secret society brothers in the infamous Skull and Bones fraternity. John Kerry descends from King Henry II of England, and Richard the Lionheart, leader of the Third Christian Crusade in 1189. He also has links to royalty in Albania, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Russia, Persia, and France, but still not enough royal genes to top George Bush. Earlier in 2000, we see the same story. George W. Bush ran neck and neck with Al Gore, another supposed Democrat and cousin of the Bush family. Michael Tessarian wrote, Al Gore is a descendant of Edward I, Roman Emperors Louis I, II, and Charles II, and is a direct descendant of Charlemagne, which makes him a distant cousin of Richard Nixon and George W. Bush. So the top Democratic candidates against Bush in 2000 and 2004 were actually his cousins. The publishing director for Burke's Peerage wrote, Never in the history of the United States have two presidential candidates been as well endowed with royal alliances. There has always been a significant royal factor in those who aspired to the White House, with Presidents George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and Ronald Reagan, among others, all boasting blue blood links. Al Gore, a descendant of Edward I, he is also a cousin of former U.S. President Richard Nixon, who resigned from the White House in 1974 for his part in the Watergate scandal. However, Al Gore does have direct links to the Holy Roman Empire. He is descendant of Roman Emperors Louis II, Charles II, and Louis I, and is therefore also a direct descendant of Charlemagne, the 8th century emperor. The problem is that Gore's Charlemagne links also make him a cousin of George W. Bush. By placing members on both sides of America's faux political dichotomy, the old monarchs have guaranteed their right to throne under the guise of democratic elections. Back in 1996, we see the same tactic, as Democrat Bill Clinton defeated Republican Bob Dole, his cousin. David Icke wrote, Even Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, who opposed each other at the 1996 election, are distant cousins. They can trace their ancestry to England's King Henry III, who reigned from 1227 to 1273, and U.S. Presidents William Henry and Benjamin Harrison. Clinton has far more royal blood than Dole, and is directly descended from the same bloodline as the House of Windsor, every Scottish monarch, and King Robert I of France. This is why he was the Brotherhood's choice. The Windsor-Bush bloodline reaches from the American presidents back to British and European royalty, and it doesn't stop there. It continues back through Roman emperors, all the way to Babylonian kings and Egyptian pharaohs near the beginning of recorded history. From Marie Antoinette and King Louis XVI, the French line continues back through from Louis XV to the First, Charles XI to the First, Henry IV to the First, Philip V to the First, Robert II, and many other French monarchs. It passes the de Medici family, specifically Catherine de Medici of France, who supported Columbus's expedition to the New World, along with bloodline Queen Isabella of Castile, King Ferdinand of Spain, and the House of Lorraine. It was also Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand who started the 350-year Spanish Inquisition, which ordered the murder of millions who refused to convert to Christianity. and from the house of Lorraine, Duc